coming today to join us. In light of recent events, we thought it would be a good opportunity to discuss the correct time to call 911 and some of the challenges that our communications unit faces. We have two speakers today. First is Major Cherie Pearsall, Pearsall. She's a major over the Administrative Services Bureau. And then second, we have Nisee, Nisee, Mauldin, Mauldin, and she has been with the Communications Division for about 21 years, first 12 years as a communications dispatcher, and then the last 9, she is the training coordinator for the Communications Division. So this time I will turn it over to Major Pearsall. Major?
Good morning. As Lieutenant Koch indicated, in light of recent occurrences involving the use of 911 or the misuse of 911, we decided to take this opportunity to talk about CMPD's comm center and how best to use it. We want to make sure that our center operates efficiently, that we're responding to calls appropriately and in a timely fashion. And I think the best way for us to do that is to provide our citizens information on how they can help us be more efficient in doing so. We'll start out first by saying 911 is for emergencies. I don't think I can put that or push that home enough. It's not for getting weather updates. It's not for getting the time. It's not for requesting the tow of vehicles. It's not for getting other city venue information. Again, I want to express that 911 is for emergencies, and the reason I highlight those types of incidences is that our telecommunicators get those types of calls, and the time that they spend addressing a non-emergency call is time that they take away from answering a true call for service that relates to an emergency or a serious incident or a situation where somebody's facing a life or death situation. I'll give you information about the volume of calls we take. On average, on a monthly basis, CMPD takes about 80,000 calls. And of those, about 10%, 6,000 to 8,000 are accidental calls. The notion is when you have an accidental call is to hang up. You accidentally hit 911, you look down at your phone, you hang the phone up immediately. In all actuality, that creates more work for us because we are required to call you back. So when you hang up, we have to assign a telecommunicator to then research and then recall and call that person back so that we can determine whether or not the individual was in true duress and they hung up the phone because they were forced to do so, if they have a true need, or if it was truly accidental, before we can move on. 911 should be used to report life and death situations, reporting situations that requires a police officer response. So if you see a fight, someone's about to get injured, there's an accident involving injury, we have a blockage of the roadway, true emergencies, domestic situations, situations where you would need an ambulance to respond to ensure that someone gets the medical care that they need, smoke or fire alarms, dial 911, reporting suspicious or criminal activity. We want to send an officer out to that. So for FY16, CMPD took, on average, 1 million calls. For FY17 and 18, just short of 1 million calls. And in those calls, year to date, we've charged about 45 folks with misuse of 911. Those include bomb threats, people asking for information that they should not be on the 911 comm center. Accidental calls, we have children playing on the phone. We get that a lot. We have people holding down a series of 9s on the phone, again, accidental. These are unintentional, but we have to call you back. CMPD has the largest comm center in the state of North Carolina. We service 850 citizens in Charlotte alone, and we also service Huntersville and Davidson. We have 142 telecommunicators. or telecommunicator positions, and right now we hold about 9 vacancies. On average in the comm center, we have about 18 to 27 telecommunicators working. And that varies based on peak times and hours, with our busiest time of the day being second shift, of course. With that, our goal is to answer all of our 911 calls, or 90% of our 911 calls within 10 seconds or less. And right now for FY19, we're currently at about 91%, which is pretty good average, but we would love for it to be higher. So in addition to answering emergency calls for service and dispatching and police, CMPD also triages calls for the fire department as well as medic. And so last year, we transferred about 21,000 calls to fire and about 120,000 calls to medic. With that said, because of the volume of calls that come in, we have to prioritize our calls, which means we need to go to the most important calls first. And so we have several priorities. We have priority 1, which is our most urgent. It's an emergency call, and our goal is to get there within 10 minutes. And that is from the time that the call is received in our center to the time that you actually see a police officer arrive on the scene. An example of that is an armed robbery in progress. So we have a suspect on the scene, we have a gun, there's a robbery, we need to get there. Officers are responding with all of their emergency equipment. Priority 2, which is an urgent call, that goal is 13 minutes. That's a breaking and entering. Just occurred, we still have suspects on scene. Priority 3 is an immediate call. That goal is about 20 minutes, and that's a traffic accident in the roadway with no injury, but we are blocking a major intersection, or there's a potential for additional harm based on the fact that these folks are blocking the highway. And then we have a priority 5, which is our routine, which is about 45 minutes. So you're in a wreck, parking lot, no injury. You can expect there to be some hold time because we are, again, triaging our most important calls. We generally meet these goals, but sometimes there are some anomalies that exist. For instance, if there's a major thunderstorm, trees down, things of the like, we can expect our call volume to increase exponentially. But again, we typically meet our call times, and our goal is to get there as quickly and efficiently as possible with all the information that the officers can use in order to respond appropriately. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Major. This time, Nisi Malden will come up, and she has some information to share as well.
Good morning. I'm here to share some information about some misuse of 911 calls and types of calls that we receive. On a regular basis, we do get a lot of 911 calls that are not meant, that should not be meant for us. Some of those calls could be informational requests. They're asking information about, for instance, a local event that's going on or some type of status of someone that's under arrest. Those should be going to the sheriff's department, and they should not be calling 911 for that information. Some of our other things that we get are a lot of law questions. People want to know, what can I do in a certain situation? And we want to, let them know we will send an officer out. We will be glad to send an officer out to speak with you, answer those questions for you. But we are not police officers, and we cannot answer those questions for you. But they still continuously call 911 and ask. Another thing that we get is a lot of directions. People are lost. They want to know. And if they want to, if they're trying to get to to a hospital or something, we offer them an ambulance. We try to get them that status or service for them. And then once we get that information to them, then we disconnect and go on to our next call. But sometimes they're just asking how to get to a place of business. They don't know where it is. They don't know how to get there. A lot of other calls that we get are animal care and control calls. We get a lot of animal control. We transfer those to 311, so we don't take care of those types of calls. Traffic. We get a lot of traffic calls because people are calling us and asking us, why is traffic backed up? What's going on? Can't you send an officer out here to direct traffic? Every call that we receive, we help the citizen. We don't hang up on them. We don't tell them that we can't help them. We do try at our best to educate them as much as possible if we have the time. And let them know, in the future, this is not a 911 type of call, but I will be glad to help you now. Some of the other things, weather-related questions. And when we get the weather-related questions, a lot of times it's weather-related what's going on, and also the power outages. We don't have any control over power outages, and we can't enter calls for service for power outages. But people will continuously call us. During the hurricanes, we received a ton of power outage calls to let us know that they were out. Keys locked in a vehicle. We do not go out and assist. Charlotte Fire will not go out and assist unless there is a person locked in, or a child locked in a vehicle, or if there's life-saving medication in the vehicle that needs to be taken at that time when the call is taken or when the call is received. Other than that, we just notify them, let them know that they need to contact a locksmith, and there's really nothing we can do for that. And then the biggest one that we get, I think, is the directory assistance. Instead of calling 411, they will call us and ask us if we have any type of, if we can give them the telephone number for the sheriff's department, or if we can give them the telephone number for Time Warner Cable, or the power company. And we try to give them, we will provide them this information, but once again, these are types of calls that should not be given to given into 911. The average call taker will stay on the phone with a caller for an average of 2 to 4 minutes. We generally will have all the information that we need within that 2 to 4 minutes, and then we can disconnect and go on to our next call. Does anyone have any questions for myself or the major?
Are you dealing with people that repeatedly call 911? I've worked on stories before where maybe it's an elderly person that will call 911 10 times a day, and they will clog up your phone lines that way. Is that another issue that you all are facing?
Yes. We get, some people just want to, sometimes they just want to get their story out there. They want to talk. They just need, and a lot of times our elderly will call because they have no one else to talk to. We receive a lot of calls from nursing homes and hospitals. They want us to get someone to help them. And we call the front desk, we call the nurse's station, and we let them know that we'll be glad to send someone up there to help them when we do get that call for service entered for them.
Do you think public education like you're doing right now is enough, or do you think that, I don't know, other steps, fines, any kind of warnings, then fines, or is it just public education?
I think public education is a start. And mind you, our goal is not to penalize people if they don't know. But once you know better, you should do better. And so I think the more we put this information out here and provide people with opportunities and examples of what is a valid 911 code and what is not, I think the community will respond accordingly. But our goal is not to charge people. But there are instances where, again, if I'm tied up on a call, 911 call with you and a non-emergency incident, there's someone out there that really, really needs police services, and you are blocking access to that. And so on those true instances where we can corroborate that, we will charge.
As a department, you guys have done a lot of training, understanding people with mental illnesses or different circumstances. Are there some situations where a person might perceive that what they're dealing with is an actual emergency that might not be an emergency to the dispatcher or the officer?
Oh, absolutely. And our goal, again, is to educate and to develop understanding, because in every opportunity on these calls, there's an opportunity for us to learn. So there are instances where you get those types of calls, and it's obvious we don't have enough information, or we can't get everything we need at the time to respond appropriately or the way we would like to respond. And so then there's a training opportunity for us if there's a gap. We want to address that.
Do you have an example or two of a particularly frustrating call that you guys might have received? Go ahead.
Okay, I'll give you an example. I took a call this past weekend, and the gentleman needed 911. He did, but we have a protocol. We have questions that we ask. We ask questions for a reason. We ask them for officer safety. We ask them to get as much information as we can to let the officers know what they are dealing with when they are on their way to the scene. And he absolutely refused to give me anything but the address, and argued with me for a good 4 to 5 minutes. As I'm asking him questions and I'm trying to redirect him, I'm asking him a question, he refuses to answer. I try to redirect, go towards something else. He's like, finally he just said, I'm not going to answer your questions, you might as well just send the police out here. But another one where a call would be possibly a non-emergency is You know, it is frustrating when we're extremely busy. We have a lot going on, hurricanes. I worked both of the hurricanes that we had. And it was very frustrating for people to call and say, you know, my power's out. How much longer do you think it's going to be before my power's on? My water is not working. How much longer do you think it's going to be before my water is working again? And it's frustrating to us because we know as call takers and telecommunicators that we're going to have emergency calls coming in that we can't get to because we're tied up with this person on the phone.
Major?
Yes.
How often do you get calls like Susan Westwood's?
To this degree, I'm not a call taker in the center, so I honestly wouldn't know. But to this degree, I think the issue with that, it came to light due to the fact that it was a social media post. So typically in the comm center, in order for us to get better, we have what's called quality assurance. And so all of our telecommunicators are subject to that. So they get random calls pulled every so often, and there's a review done, and then they're provided with feedback on how they could do better. Can you get the address sooner? Can you do X, Y, Z? At this point in time, when this incident hit the social media, that was not under the random call pool, but we went and pulled the calls and found all the calls associated with that. And so therein lies everything that followed after that with the charging process and then the issuance of an arrest warrant for the misuse of 911. But just to say outright, I don't think we've ever had one to this degree as long as I've been in admin.
You listened in on it as part of the review?
I did.
What do you think?
I thought it was a extreme misuse of 911. And I'll say that because, again, 911 is for emergencies, and when you call in what we deem to be a falsehood, so we had corroborating evidence as it relates to the additional videos and the other two calls. Those didn't match at all. And so I think it was an egregious misuse of 911 because the officers are going to be responding based on the information that was put in the call. We were fortunate enough that the telecommunicator on the line with Ms. Westwood had information related to the other two calls, knew we were en route. Had he not known that, he probably would have dispatched based on the fact that it was indicated that there was a burglary in progress, suspects on scene, which would have been deemed a priority 1 call. That means officers would have been responding with all of their emergency equipment. That is a problem for us because anytime we travel emergency traffic, there's a potential for harm because we are driving at high rates of speed, we're clearing intersections, we're trying to get there quickly because we deem that there's an issue and a possible loss of life, possible injury. So you have possible injury to the officers, and then they respond with an elevated response. So this is not a random, my car's been broken into, I need to respond, it's property damage only. There is an issue where someone may be hurt. And so for us, that was an egregious misuse of 911 because it was a false call. And then the telecommunicator was on the call for approximately 6 minutes and 45 seconds. How many incidences could we have handled of an emergency nature during that time? That's an egregious misuse.
Does the penalty vary based on the misuse of 911, like an accidental dial versus an egregious misuse, for example?
Yeah, I think if it's deemed a violation of the law, there are penalties for that. It is a misdemeanor to misuse the 911 system. An accidental call, we wouldn't intentionally go after someone for that. That's an opportunity to educate. Our goal is to educate so that we can reduce the number of calls like that, because in doing so, that helps us be more effective. We don't want to continue to take 6,000 to 8,000 accidental calls a month. If we can reduce that number by educating, then that bodes well for our comm center and our citizens as a whole.
Can you talk about the financial impact at all? I know with accidental calls, have a dispatcher who's solely there to call back the hang-up calls, that plus the misuse calls. Do you have any idea how much that's costing the city?
I don't know if I could put a number to it other than if you would put the salary of one person or 2 people. They could run, hundreds of thousands a year. I don't know if I've actually put a number to that because there's several variables: the amount of time on the call, how many personnel we have to dedicate to responding to that call. And I haven't put an actual number to that, but I don't think it's something that the citizens would want to pay if they don't have to.
All right, thank you, Major. Thank you, Nisi. Appreciate it. We do have some B-roll available of the Communications Center, which we will send out shortly in an email for you guys to use. We shot that yesterday. So does anybody have any questions about any other incidents or anything else that's happened?
Rape suspect?
I'm sorry, what's that?
A rape suspect?
We're still looking for him. He's still, Mr. Thomas, we still have not located him at this point. We do have his video, technical difficulties, or I'm sorry, his picture here. So, you know, we still ask for the public's assistance in trying to locate him. You had one job. One job.
There we go.
Any other questions?
LT, do you have any audio to go along with our random calls, bad calls?
You know, yes, we sure do.
Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you guys very much. Appreciate your time. Nisi will be available, as well as Major Pearsall, if you guys want to talk to them more in depth about this issue. So thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Have a good day.